kind of see some of the commonalities that I found in it as I started to work with some of these AI vision models to solve the first problem, which is, what is a bubble person to AI? How can we get AI to see something as a bubble person? And what is an AI that can see this bubble person? And also, I kind of felt I wanted something that was a little bit cohesive, that told a little bit of a story here, but I had no idea what story to tell. And so I'll just kind of share the first idea I had and what I was working up to until the week of the show on May 8th was this idea of deconstructing the bubble people into those common elements, because I felt if I could get an AI to understand the component level, I could then deconstruct it and perhaps build kind of like a sprite-based, animation-based AI engine that could automatically generate scenes on the screen of the bubble people doing things, or perhaps automatically generate the story for me and bring it all together. And so I'll share a little bit of what the deconstructed kind of story I was originally going for was, because that's not what we ended up with, right? The original story of the deconstruction was kind of meant to bring their component pieces out. And one of the things that you'll see in a lot of the paintings is that there's some sort of object, some sort of point of focus that's often not the bubble person. You could ask yourself, is that the primary focus, the secondary focus of the piece? Up to you to decide that. Has anybody seen the movie Empire of the Sun, starring a very young Christian Bale? Okay, I know a few of you have seen that movie. It is an excellent movie. Christian Bale is about 12 years old. It's got John Malkovich, Ben Stiller, and it is set in, and keep me honest here for those of you who are better students of history than I am, but it is set in Japanese occupied English settlement. Anyway, the Christian Bale's character ends up in an internment camp, split up from his parents. An amazing kind of coming of age story under very difficult conditions. And there's a scene towards the end where a young Christian Bale, he's out of the internment camp, so a little spoiler alert there, and he's wandering, dazed and shell-shocked along the roads, and there's a big soccer stadium. And the soccer stadium is all of the wealth of the English who had been occupying this colonial area there that got overthrown during the Japanese occupation there. So that was kind of what was in my mind, is that these bubble people with their textures, they were all going to kind of converge into this space of their things and their selves there. So I had started, and we'll just see, I don't know if all the audio will go in here, but I had started with this idea of what does it mean just to, and we don't really want to use this app. So here's take one, my first pass using AI. So it's starting to be able to identify what a bubble person is from the background, what heart is, and so I had a test set of about 4 of the pieces that I was using. But what I really wanted to do, so there's like a lock and a fish, I really wanted to see if it could identify them. So that, I think I heard you ask, how did you do that? So that is I'm using an AI tool from a company called Anthropic. The tool is called Claude and Claude Code. They're complementary tools there to build essentially a production pipeline. So just like a transaction at a store might go from order to order fulfilled to shipping to confirmation to tax, all that, building a software pipeline that can take this particular bubble person, this particular prompt, and then generate something from it. But it has to use a model. It has to use an AI model there. And I wasn't really ready to commit to a model just yet, so I was using this sort of open source model, I think it was called Visify. Myself up here, I'm going to change whatever default app opens my videos. Called Visify. So I was building a software pipeline that used AI, and I was trying to successively better and better identify what is a bubble person by changing the prompt, by trying to describe, all right, they have a halo, they have a heart, they have a torso. There's always a background. There's some commonalities in the color. To try to see how could I get it to find the person, kind of find the accessory, And it's just trying to do a simple motion. It's just trying to pull them off screen, because I felt like if I could get to that, I could probably get them walking. But it's still struggling, you see. It's not getting a clean. That one was pretty good because they're pretty identifiable. Here's our guitarist that you saw earlier in the street scene next to the Waymo. Here's our pizza folks here, half pepperoni, half cheese, that Joshua mentioned earlier, that were at the pizza machine. But we're far away from getting to animate them here at the pizza machine. Let's see, so let me go up to take, uninstall that. Let's see, take 4. Still using this Visipy model here to try to, what I call it, the pipeline is called decomposing paintings. And as it tried to identify what a bubble person was, and it got better at identifying a bubble person, it then wanted to make them more like a person. And that wasn't really the aesthetic that I was going for. I wanted to maintain the fidelity of Joshua's art, of Joshua's style. And you see, they just kind of get more and more person. And we'll look at this one more, and then we'll go to the second model of the 3 that we did. So I think this was the final one. And at this point, I'm getting some diminishing returns, I think, because there was a large blue square, and it just took off of there. I don't know, it's just dancing around. We lose kind of the feet, maybe. So you see, this is where I was like, okay, this is as far as I think I can take this sort of Vivify model here. Let's look at what Google has out there. Google has, their AI suite is called Gemini, and they have a couple of different vision-based tools here and animation-based tools. So VO being one of them. And also, the interesting thing, it just started like, so a lot of times software developers don't like to read the actual documentation of what the software can do, so I was pleasantly surprised when I started working with this one. And so VO was able to preserve, I think, more of the fidelity of Joshua's art here, while at the same time being able to recognize what is a public person. And let's see. Arcade and then this one here. So I was very pleased that VO could hold the fidelity that I wanted there. And it added audio. So I was like, okay, this is great. Now we needed a story. And I had gotten about this far, and it was time to hang the show. So we did the initial hanging on the first, where we put the vinyl up, you saw that in some of the promotional videos. And then I had to get on a plane at 6 a.m. the next morning, I think it was that week, and go to San Francisco for a business trip. And when I got to San Francisco, I saw, you may have seen it in the, I won't switch over my photos right now, but you may have seen it in the video. There's 2 of the articulated San Francisco Muni buses, like the Pulse buses that we have. And they're fully wrapped in advertising for AI tooling. So there's one you can see in the video that talks about generated images and video go on this one platform that I've never heard of, and it's probably some startup with venture capital. We may never hear of them. There was another one that was interesting that was like, how do you know if who you're talking to online is real or an agent? Personified.ai, I think, or something. But all over San Francisco, all of the billboard advertising, all of the bus station advertising, there is all about AI tools and tech and all of that. And while you're there in San Francisco, you see people openly injecting heroin into the same bus stops. And so the contrast, you see people defecating in the street in San Francisco, in the business district, where these venture capital funded, high tech, the world that I work in, it happens and is built. And so I kind of got this idea of what would it mean to kind of juxtapose these very human bubble people onto the streets of San Francisco. And so conveniently enough, I had my iPhone with me, and I was able to capture a lot of 4K footage around my hotel and kind of while I was walking between the conference and back, as well as in the Detroit Wayne Airport in Detroit. And so I do want to call out too in the video, to properly credit the video, I have a little bit of research I need to do, because there's at least 2 artists' work that appear in the main video. When the bubble person is dancing in the fountain, that is an art installation right there. And if you've been in Detroit Wayne, there's a tunnel that you can walk through between 2 of the terminals. And in that tunnel is this lights, sounds, immersive installation as you go through 3 of the people mover sidewalks under the runway there. There's a button you can press that says, if you're light or sound sensitive, turn this off, and the art installation will be stopped so that you can pass through. And there was a gentleman in front of me as I was walking through the button just to get some footage of that. He said, hey, press the button, my kid's on the phone. I said, oh, no, the button stops. If your kid's on the phone, just keep going. I'm not gonna press the button. He's like, oh, okay, thank you. So I started taking what you might consider B-roll, the environmental. I took the escalator, I took the people mover, some of those things. But I do want to call out, right, there's other artists, public art that I took into that. So as I started to look at this, there's one that appears twice. And this was kind of the first test one I did, and I knew it would need to be on the green screen. I wanted this one here with the pho to walk in and walk across the street and screen and exit here, right? I wanted them to be close up in the foreground. I was trying a lot of different camera directions. This guy never makes it across, right? And there's another one, because it's just supposed to be that one that was far off, right? I was trying to play with perspective and distance, and I learned a lot from how I use the AI. So a little quick note about that was, I kind of believe, and I would encourage anybody who's experimenting with AI, is that no human can really understand the full capabilities of these AI models and tools. So the best way to understand them is just to ask them, how do I do this thing in this model? Or how do I do this thing with you? And what it started telling me as I was building up and evolving the software pipeline, which we'll talk about where that came in a minute, is that I need to give cinematographic direction, as if I were a cinematographer, right? And use that language. And so now I've got the AI teaching me the cinematography language of how to control the camera, and then in turn using that to prompt the AI and build up what are these larger prompts here. So what you just saw there is actually a culmination of a software pipeline of 3 separate prompts. There's a shared prompt that talks about animate this painting strictly within the visual language of the original work. Every frame of the output must look as though it was redrawn by hand using the same materials on the same surface by the same artist. The following constraints are absolute and override any default model behavior. And then it talks about medium fidelity. No upward refinement, which is the challenge I was working to prompt out when it was upwardly refinement. No anthropomorphization or object recognition override. The AI really wants to give the bubble people the appendages that they don't have in Joshua's original art. No CG lighting, depth, or dimensionality, because I knew I needed to kind of mat them flat on here. Frame by frame, redraw aesthetic. So again, not like generated tweening, but hand drawn between each frame. Static camera, color palette, block, compositional anchor. Then there's one prompt that just describes how to get the green screen effect. It's about a half page there. The other one is about kind of a page and a quarter there. And then that one from Needs More Hoisin, I'll just start with the subject here. The bubble person, BP, from the source painting, head with gold leaf halo, torso and bowl of pho held in front of them. Reproduce BP exactly as painted. Same line weight, same pastel and watercolor marks. Same flat, naive construction. Same dot eye, same rough dark contour lines. The bowl and its contents, the star/asterisk mark on the surface of the pho, are part of BP and move with them as a single unit. And then it goes into scale and proportion strictly, the actual timing, and because the Google VO model limits you to only 8-second clips. Walk motion, critically, BP does not have legs and gentrolateral motion that it describes. So I was very excited that I got a bubble person walking across the screen. And I had kind of gone through, I think there were 27 or so paintings, maybe 30 paintings that I had to work with from the scans, and thinking through what I saw in San Francisco. What was contrary there to the unhoused or the less fortunate people who you see on the street juxtaposed with that AI advertising. And I really felt that the bubble person with the guitar, which is titled "Get on Board the Funky Wagon." Now the interesting thing about this one, let me see if I can leave that up while I get my... So basically that first subject prompt for this one describes it as a busker bubble person with his guitar. There's a backstory for this one though, and this is for performance only. Do not render any of this literally. And what I'll say is this backstory is not actually the prompt that I wrote. What I'm reading you is actually the prompt that AI wrote based on directions I was giving it so that it could actually prompt the image model here. BP is unhoused, busking on the streets of San Francisco. He is down on his luck, weary, drained, hollowed out. He is not actively performing right now. The guitar is just with him, between songs or between hours. His state is forlorn and heavy. Whether he has been using something is left ambiguous to a passing observer. And so that last line, I'll read that again. Whether he has been using something is left ambiguous to a passing observer. These models have what they call safety features, and there are limits to what sort of illicit or violent or whatever kind of content-based morality that the model owners, the model administrators hold you to. And so there was some discussion with the AI initially on kind of how to represent this person who may or may not have been intoxicated. Because we have to admit, if we walk down the streets and we don't see that, we don't know if someone is mentally ill or intoxicated or just has something else going on. So I didn't want to be overt with this, but the intention for this one, he kind of showed up next to the Waymo before it gets set on fire by the other one. The intention here was that he was maybe down on his luck and kind of on the street there. So really, with this process, it started going fairly fast. And so a lot of this I did on my flight back. I was working on it with this software pipeline, the airplane Wi-Fi, and the images, because the actual payload that I needed to send to the AI and back was really that of a text conversation, because the software pipeline was doing the work for me, did have to upload the high-resolution image of the particular bubble person in question, and then it had to download the fully rendered 8-second video file, and you can't get them back. It's a one-shot. Thankfully, on the way to San Francisco to Detroit, I had good Wi-Fi. The story was starting to come together in my head, and I had started to assemble this all in Final Cut Pro. So let's see if I can do this and mess the whole thing up. So this is Final Cut Pro on the iPad, and I was starting to layer my street scenes into a timeline and layer the bubble people that I had selected in green screen over that timeline. So while I was at the Detroit airport, I shot kind of some interstitial footage there to kind of show that the bubble people were on a journey. And then with that, we kind of rendered the whole thing out into the software pipeline, set up in Final Cut Pro, kind of rearranged it a little bit there, and it was able to kind of be put all together. Now there was still a lot of things that were left on the cutting room floor. One of the challenges was getting it to not put in some of the things that they were supposed to be touching. How could they, so I would have to say, okay, the escalator's not really there, but you're next to it there. So yeah, and then I'll just kind of share the last thing. I think one thing as we think about being artists is our materials cost, right? AI costs money to run. I think this is the first time my wife Debbie, who's an amazing supporter of me, is going to see how much did it cost Eszett, the company here, to run this, right? So my pipeline also logged the cost the same way that a checkbook register would. And so that also would show for kind of an important thing in AI is the explainability. What model did you use? What was the prompt? How did you actually generate that image? And so we actually used two models from Google in the pipeline. Gemini 2.5 flash vision, and VO 3.1 fast 4K, because all the imagery I was able to take in San Francisco, my iPhone was 4K, so I wanted the whole thing in 4K. And so basically there's a process that the pipeline goes through that it uses one set of prompting to look at and understand and recognize what the bubble person is and what the other things might be in the artwork is. And then it uses VO to create the 8-second clip. And when it was all said and done, I used $48.03 worth of compute there to generate what you saw, including what did not show up in the final